Football is important. It's the most important thing.
And welcome back to the NFLandU podcast, everybody. Believe it or not, the season is not yet done. We still got a lot of football left to be played because it is championship weekend. It's almost as big as the Super Bowl, if you ask me. A lot on the line for these four teams that are still left standing, and a lot to be decided this coming Sunday in both the AFC and the NFC, because this is it, the ultimate winner-go-home game. You win, you are going to the Super Bowl to play for it all. You lose, and, well, tough luck. So we're going to get through all the games this week and have a very fun game at the end of the show to talk about. But before we get into all that, we first have to introduce my good friend Mark Hogan, who is here with me today. Mark, how you doing?
Yeah, how's it going, Hayden? I suppose I'm over here feeling a bit bittersweet. Like you said, we're at that point in the season now. I'm looking at the space on my computer where I used to house a lot of notes. And now I can sum up the season with 7 words: Kansas City, Buffalo, Green Bay, Tampa Bay. After what's been a chaotic year, it's kind of nice that we've just gotten to 4 powerhouses. They've been thereabouts all year. We haven't had too many surprises. So, yeah, definitely exciting. And we've gotten, some superb teams left ready to go at it, win that place in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is definitely bittersweet because we went through so many weeks of having all of these games going on, and now it's just, okay, we'll take up like 6 hours of our time on Sunday, and then that'll be it for 2 weeks without football. But yeah, like Mark said, it's really exciting. We got a lot of stuff to talk about this week for both games. And then make sure to stick around for the very end of the show because we're going to have this very special game that we're going to play with everybody. And it should be a lot of fun, a different way of looking at the game.
We should tee it up. The game leads to someone perhaps winning a chance to go to the Super Bowl in 2022. It's not our game. It's NFL are doing, I think it's called Pick and Party. We've been playing the last couple of weeks. It's a lot of fun. I won off a similar game last year run by Bud Light, a signed David Johnson helmet and tickets to a game. So it's just, it's kind of 50-50 questions. Stuff like, can you throw out an example? Will there be a 2-point conversion?
Yes.
Made in this game kind of stuff. And we've broken down all of this week's questions and we'll dive into them. And if you get all 15 right, there's a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. So it's a lot of fun to play anyway. If you're not a gambler, if you don't want to put money on the line, I know these kind of had that same thrill to them. So we'll do that at the end of the show. And hopefully one of our listeners will bring us out.
Yeah, that's how it works. If you win, you have to invite one of us to go to LA next year for the Super Bowl because we helped you make those picks and that you were required by law to take us. So make sure to stick around for the very end of the show after we break down the games. It should be a lot of fun. But Mark, if it's okay with you, do you mind if we go ahead and get into these?
Get this show on the road, Hayden.
Title games, Mark. Oh my goodness, they are so amazing. I almost have to fan myself because there's so much heat coming off of these games. And Mark, I want to go first to the AFC Championship game because that's going to be the one everybody talks about, not just this Sunday because it's going to be the late game, but it's going to be the game everybody talks about over the course of the week for one reason and one reason only, Patrick Mahomes. And not the normal reason we talk about Patrick Mahomes. Normally it's how great he is, how awesome it is. Right now the question is he going to play? Because if you missed the divisional round playoff game where the Chiefs barely survived the Browns, Patrick Mahomes suffered a concussion in the third quarter after a hit to the ground. And his status is a bit up in the air right now. And if you're a Chiefs fan, that is not a good place to be when your all-time great quarterback, which feels crazy to say about a guy in his 4th year. We're calling him an all-time great already, but he is. His status is up in the air because of the concussion. And I don't know if we'll get an answer on Patrick Mahomes until probably later in the week, maybe even Friday or Saturday. Full disclosure, we were recording this on a Wednesday afternoon. And on Monday, they said his status was, it's too early to figure out if he's going to be able to play or not. Then Tuesday, they said, we still don't have a determination on his status. Wednesday rolls around, and they announced that he was a full participant in practice, but he hadn't cleared concussion protocol, which seems a little weird. But then about 40 minutes after they announced that Patrick Mahomes had been a full participant in practice, they updated it saying he was a limited participant in practice. But the point remains he was at least practicing in some regard. So that's at least some kind of good news for the good people of Kansas City.
And I think it's worth pointing out, Hayden, like it is the concussion protocol that he's in, but they're talking now about maybe that it was a nerve that was the damage, that it wasn't quite the brain hitting the front of his skull that knocked him out the other day. It could have been that just a nerve shock went through the body, and the signs are positive. There was a good point made on one of the podcasts I listened to, Pro Pro Football Talk with Mike Florio this week, saying that it'll be extremely difficult to keep him out of the game because whatever independent doctor is dealing with this will also know that the weight of the game that's going on, you can't be completely 100% independent when you're in this position. Now, obviously, he's supposed to look after Patrick Mahomes as a medical practitioner, but it is extremely difficult for him to ignore the outside noise. He knows the guys he's dealing with, so on and so forth. So I think one way or another, Patrick Mahomes is going to play. I hope that he's healthy, and I believe that he is healthy. But I feel one way or another he's going to be in that game.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to lead into this by saying is that, it's on track to whether if it is a concussion or it's not a concussion. Like Mark said, it could be a nerve thing. And if it's a nerve thing, I think the people of Kansas City would take that over him having, some kind of brain injury like a concussion. But it seems like unless there's some kind of setback this week, this isn't what the team's saying. This is just my personal opinion. I think Patrick Mahomes will play this Sunday in the championship game. Listen, it's their biggest game of the season so far. He'll find a way to get out there. And you would hope that he's 100% healthy if he does take the field. But even if he doesn't, like, let's say there's some kind of setback on like Friday or Saturday and they say he can't clear concussion protocol, or if the nerve, like Mark said, still acting up, that means Chad Henne would have to come out. And if you're a Kansas City fan, you think that'd be a death sentence. But you know what? He rose to the occasion in the divisional round. It didn't feel like the moment was too big to hit for him, besides that one awful interception in the fourth quarter. He scrambled for that big third down, which I still don't understand how the Cleveland Browns allowed him to do that, where he scrambled for 15 yards and he converted on that fourth down play, which is one of the gutsiest calls I've ever seen in the postseason. And, he has some kind of confidence in the locker room. You see guys like Patrick Mahomes, the aforementioned Mahomes, get on Twitter with the hashtag #anything'spossible. So even if Mahomes doesn't play, I think they'll be just fine if Chad Henne comes out. Obviously there would be a drop off of some sort, but I do think Mahomes will play, and that even if he doesn't, I think the Chiefs could potentially be just fine in a game they absolutely have to have.
The anything is possible tweet that was put out does really point to him being Patrick Mahomes being some bit of confidence that he'll play, because when a guy, say, does his ACL or anything and is out for the season, a concussion could rule you out for the season if it's that bad. You don't hear from them for a couple of days, and then an emotional tweet is sent out confirming the worst.
Right. Patrick
Mahomes was far from that the other day. When he tweeted that out, I was like, this guy's okay. He's going to be playing this weekend. Yeah, if Chad Henne is in, obviously that's not great, and it certainly swings in Buffalo's favor the game. But you have to, if you're a Kansas City fan, be confident after seeing that play that they made to win the game. And the confidence, maybe it wasn't even confidence, maybe it was just pure boldness on Andy Reid's part to allow Chad Henne to go for that. He almost ran for the first down. He didn't even need to throw it.
Right.
So, I almost don't think it's worth talking about the Mahomes thing for as long as we are, because I truly think that he's going to be playing in this game. But I suppose we have to cover our bases, and there you go. I think that he does play. Yeah,
and but Kansas City kind of needs him because they're playing a Buffalo team that could very easily make it to the Super Bowl, and that a team that, even if Mahomes was 100%, didn't have a concussion or a nerve injury, like Mark said, I think they would still be heavily challenged with this Buffalo team right now. And that, it's a tough opponent. It really is.
Like, looking at Buffalo last week, I obviously really wanted to see that matchup with the passing game, and it was something that I cried out for all year. And the wind, I text you jokingly saying, at least no one can see that wind. It looks like our prediction was right, that they would be or the Ravens secondary would cause Buffalo problems. But ultimately it was the wind. But what was crazy was Josh Allen, like, he had his lowest passer rating of the game, or of the year, the other day. They didn't run the ball once until the second half. Sorry, they did. Josh Allen had a scramble that was their one rush in the first half. They just threw and threw and threw against that secondary that they're having no success against, which is a strange way to try and win the game. But when they weren't able to win through their offense, they just waited, bend don't break kind of attitude, waited for the Buffalo defense to step up they got that pick six that won them the game thanks to Teron Johnson. And it gave me a lot of confidence in Buffalo because it just did show that they found ways to win. And that's the signs, obviously, of a good team. And they did that against a good team in Baltimore the other day. And they come in super hot. I mean, you can't. I would have been one of the people at the beginning of the year to take away from Buffalo saying, oh, the wind won them get this game and Lamar Jackson going out costing this game. But at the end of the day, like, you can't keep saying that about a team when they consistently beat good teams.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just keep on throwing excuses in there. They're beating top teams and they deserve to be here. And they really have a good shot with Patrick Mahomes in or out. Buffalo is a great shot of winning this weekend.
They do. They absolutely 100% do. And, I saw this statistic on the NFL Network when I was doing homework the other day, and I just happened to look up at the TV. And this graphic that said that the Buffalo Bills have the lowest points per game out of any team in the postseason that's still remaining, out of Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Kansas City. And it felt like they were kind of dogging on the Bills and really kind of giving them shade for it. And I sat there kind of bewildered. I'm like, you guys do realize they played two of the toughest defenses back to back, and they found ways to win in those games. This team is battle tested. They have gone through everything. We should have no questions about the Bills. Of course they can come in and beat the Chiefs and go to the Super Bowl. There's not a doubt in my mind they can do that. And I can't believe I'm saying that because the Chiefs are supposed to be some unbeatable god of football. But I think the Buffalo Bills could actually do it this week, Mark. I really do.
I think that we've all given so much credit to Kansas City being gods, like you said, and unbeatable. They did it again, Hayden. They had another close win where they looked dominant, but they still came away with less than a touchdown in it. So Kansas City, I suppose, they are who we thought they were, but in a good sense. I mean, they definitely have it in them to always win. If we're to actually break down the game on a deeper level, I think that Cleveland, for some reason, didn't run the ball effectively until the second half against Kansas City. And when they started to do that, they started to get into the game. Now, as I just mentioned a minute ago, Buffalo didn't run the ball more than one time in the first half against Baltimore the other day. So that needs to change big time if they're going to go against Kansas. Because, again, you have to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. So there's no point going with this offense that, I mean, they started the game with a 3-and-out, I think, against Baltimore the other day, did Buffalo. So they can't do that against Kansas City. Kansas City, if anything, come out explosive in the beginning. So I'd look forward to seeing Buffalo's game plan because we know that it all is about passing and they don't have an effective run game at the moment anymore because the passing game has been so important to them. And when it comes to the passing game, I'm really interested in Tyrann Mathieu and Daniel Sorensen and what they can do because the last day against Cleveland, they were super aggressive. And, like they hit the Daniel Sorensen that forced the fumble and all the conversation that's come out of that. And just Tyrann Mathieu off the ball, just chipping away at players, talking to them, getting them riled up. And what do we know of Stephon Diggs when the whole trade and stuff happened, Hayden? He used to be a hothead. That's what he used to be known as. This time last year, he was coming off the New Orleans Saints game where he wasn't targeted through 3 quarters and he's on the sideline throwing his helmet, giving out about his own team. If you can get inside his head, like I think Tyrann Mathieu and Daniel Sorensen can, because they're just pure intimidating safeties, I think you have a great chance of just putting him off his game and, making the Buffalo defense fall apart a bit or offense fall apart a bit.
I love this psychological aspect you're bringing to the table because you're right. I remember those days where, there was this supposed beef with him and Kirk Cousins and it was throwing everything off. And, him coming to Buffalo, it really unlocked a lot of things for that entire offense. So if you could take him out, not physically take him out, not lock him down, but just mentally get him off his game, it could throw that entire offense off its kilter with a team that's, struggled to run the ball in the postseason. This is what Mark's saying about what Buffalo did in the Baltimore game. This was the exact kind of criticisms we leveled at them after they beat the Colts. They struggled to run the ball in that game as well. So they're going to struggle to run the ball in this game as well, in case you need a crystal ball to figure that one out. But all that being said is that this Buffalo team is high powered on offense, is that if you can find a way to take Stephon Diggs out, that's good. You're going to need to do that because I feel like he's going to get his at some point. He's just that kind of receiver this year. And maybe, okay, sure, you keep him out of the end zone, but what's your plan for Cole Beasley? What's your plan for Dawson Knox? And then by God, Josh Allen's going to run at some point. He just is because he is their entire running game. He's going to take off at some point. So what's your plan for that? I'm not as concerned about the Buffalo offense. I'm more concerned about their defense, that even though when they, had a solid enough performance against the Ravens, there were still times when there was this one Ravens wide receiver that is just running wide open down the field and Lamar Jackson missed him because of the wind. I know that if those Ravens wide receivers could get open, I know damn well the Chiefs wide receivers are going to get open. I know Tyreek Hill is going to get open at least a couple of times. Tony Romo talked about it in the broadcast of how Tyreek Hill just runs across the field and nobody can catch him. And he's just unbeatable because his Twitter name is literally Cheetah for a reason, because he's fast. Like, there is no game plan that's going to stop that. And that's what I worry about, is that Buffalo might get in a shootout. And I don't know if you want to do that against Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, the secondary is good for Buffalo, so it's an interesting matchup. I mean, with Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Levi Wallace, they certainly have enough guys there that it's a bit like what we were saying with Baltimore last year, that there should be, or last week, there should be enough guys to go around and defend the players. But yeah, like you said, going up against Tyreek Hill, he will, have the deep ball option there, and you don't know when it's going to come. So it's super interesting. So I think that's where it falls back on for me as well, that Kansas City's offense, like again, in the first drive last week, looked explosive.
Mm-hmm.
And if they come out with that explosiveness, that's where Buffalo's going to really struggle and could fall behind and fall apart, quite honestly. I mean, it's happened in other years, like the Cardinals against Carolina in the 2015 championship game will always come back to me, just heartbreak of when when an explosive team comes out first and you get caught with what people predicted, where the area people predicted you get caught.
Yeah.
It can be devastating. And I think that, if Kansas City could come and cause Buffalo the problems that they were able to mask against Baltimore, if they get found out for the things that they couldn't mask against Baltimore, then I think that's going to be there could be some alarm bells ringing early for them there, because you can't adjust that in the middle of the game. You've had all week to prep for it, and then it's like if your plans go out the window, it's not like suddenly the secondary kind of you can drop guys back, but again, they've just so many weapons in Kansas City that if they start to get rolling, it's not like you can give help to double Tyreek Hill. This has been the problem with Kansas City, with playing Kansas City for so long. It's that if you focus on one aspect, they have another aspect to attack you with. So you can only ever go with one-on-one coverage.
Yeah, it's going to be a pain, but it's going to be interesting to see how they solve it, if they can at all, which, no team has really solved it quite yet. So, now would be a good time for Buffalo to do so. But, Mark, can I ask you something? It's something very important.
Yeah, fire away. I don't want to come off the game yet because I won't.
Oh, yeah, we're not coming off the game just yet. We got to pick a winner here. Mark, who's going to go to the Super Bowl for the AFC right here, right now? What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think it's Kansas City, Hayden, because I think that the clutchness of Andy Reid showed against Cleveland the other day when, the deck was stacked against them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that comes through again. I can't say that I'll be rooting against Buffalo either. I think part of my pick is that I've picked against Buffalo throughout the playoffs now. So am I suddenly going to pick for them when it's Kansas City? We've seen so much from Buffalo this year, especially for someone like me that was awful harsh on them for a number of weeks. And then it's, like I said earlier on today, that I just have to give it to them, that they keep on coming through all these challenges, overcoming the hurdles, that at some point you just have to tip your hat and say it's not just luck, like luck favors the prepared. And they certainly are prepared. But I think that I'm going with my beginning of the year prediction of Kansas City, that, Andy Reid's clutchness showed even when Patrick Mahomes wasn't on the field. And I think, that, like we said, they've had all these close games all year, but they've still always looked in control. And I haven't seen them not in control yet. And I think that continues on, especially, I think it's huge, Hayden, I should add, I think it's huge that it's in Kansas City, because I was worried at the beginning of the last game with Baltimore having picked against Buffalo, and suddenly the crowd was getting into it. And I was like, that was the first time all year home field advantage actually should have been taken into account for a game.
Yeah, and that being said, Kansas City has allowed fans into the stadium, so Buffalo at least has some kind of test run to some degree with fans in the stadium and how that sounds. But going on the road with fans, that's a whole new ball game for a team this year.
But especially with Kansas City's fans, who we know are super loud, like the loudest recorded. I don't know the number, but it looked far too many for my liking the other day. Actually, sorry, I think it was 16,000. I looked it up because I was so shocked. It's 16,000 people in attendance the other day, which
You're
was
loud.
far too much for my liking. But there you go. I'm going to go with Kansas City in this game.
So all the way back in 1994 was the Bills' last playoff appearance, and their entire not playoff appearance, AFC Championship appearance. Their entire team history, they are 4-1 in AFC Championship games. The last time they went to the AFC Championship game, you know who their opponent was? Kansas City Chiefs. Bills won that game. I'm taking the Bills to win this Sunday, Mark. Give it to me. They've been good to me all year. I'm taking the Bills.
Oh, good. Hayden, we are going to obviously have our picks on Twitter on Friday. This is obviously going to be out. Our picks will be up there on Friday. I'm really looking forward to seeing who this game favors. I mean, we don't have all of our picks back yet. The way it's going right now, I'm the only one that's picked Kansas City. Ooh. I know Stu, the Celtic Cardinal, has gone with Buffalo. And I think James Hill from Across the Pond podcast, he got back to me, and I think he's gone with Buffalo as well.
Let's go.
So imagine, I'd love to know what our listeners think. Obviously, you can get in touch with us if you want with who you think's going to win. The bookies have this game as a 3-point Kansas City spread as we speak right now. So it's super interesting. It just shows the level that Buffalo is playing at this year, that even the Kansas City Chiefs, the mighty Kansas City Chiefs, can't deter people from going with Buffalo.
Yeah, there's finally a worthy opponent for Kansas City. So that's the AFC Championship game. We split on that.
Well, look, Hayden, whoever wins the Buffalo Kansas City game, I must say it matches up massively for if Tom Brady is to come out of this next game. Because what would you rather see in the Super Bowl? Would you like to see Patrick Mahomes play Tom Brady? Perhaps that'll be the GOAT versus GOAT when we look back on it in 20 years' time. Game, the passing of the torch, the replay of the 2018 AFC Championship game that was an absolute barn burner when it went to overtime.
Yeah.
Or will it be Tom Brady versus the Buffalo Bills once more? Imagine Buffalo Bills fans staring at Tom Brady on the other side of the field once more, the guy that's been their nightmares. And what a way to relinquish the demons than to beat Tom Brady.
That's true. I mean, poor Buffalo, like they finally got rid of them. They're in the AFC title game and they finally get to the Super Bowl. And who's waiting for them? It's Brady. Like, come on, they can't catch a break.
Well, I'm glad that Brady is the narrative, Hayden, because his move is what got us talking about Tampa Bay in the first place. And it's almost like he knew to get a Super Bowl that he would have to go through the NFC, because the AFC route was an absolute shut door. I mean, he went between 2011 and 2018. He got to at least this weekend with the New England Patriots. Then he didn't make it past the wildcard weekend in 2019, and he jumped ship then to Tampa Bay. And it's almost like he realized which landing spot would be perfect for him. And it brought me back to something that I wrote last year. June of 2019, I put this out about how I thought that the Tampa Bay Bucks were on the verge of becoming relevant again, is what I named it. And it was 1,700 words that I talked about how Jason Licht, the general manager, was after luring Bruce Arians out of retirement, and that brought with him the Arizona staff that had brought success to the Cardinals in 2014, 2015. They made the bold move of getting rid of Gerald McCoy and a huge cap hit to bring in Ndamukong Suh, who they want to pair with Vita Vea. They're obviously stud first-round pick from the year before. They drafted that year Devin White, 5th overall, to pair with Levante David, and that's gone on to become probably the best middle linebacker duo in the NFL. And then they had drafted one offensive player in that draft because they already had a stacked offense, like your Chris Godwins, your Mike Evans, all of them were already there. So all the main pieces have been in place since 2019, bar one, Tom Brady, the X Factor. I mean, talking to James Hill from Across the Pond podcast, who's a Bucks fan, he was saying, agreeing with me about the kind of the importance of that game management, that Bruce Arians, I think he's a great play caller, but when he gets behind in a game, he struggles sometimes to crawl his way out of it. That he's all about the deep ball and all this, and it just when a team figures him out, forget about it. He's gone. So I think it's huge that Tom Brady is in Tampa Bay because he brings that element of composure to the team and always gives them the chance of winning. Now, obviously, he's also brought in the likes of Antonio Brown. I mean, that's a guy that Bruce Arians had complained about last year when Antonio Brown was being a bit too loud for anyone's liking. And obviously, it attracts Rob Gronkowski, who, he's a pass blocker essentially now at this point. But also, it allows him to pull the trigger then, the final piece. The running back room, then they're able to get Leonard Fournette. Mm-hmm. And sure, look at the importance of these moves now. Like playoff Lenny, as they're calling him. He had a bit of a lull after coming to Tampa Bay, and he's had back-to-back 100-yard games. I mean, the offense was running the other day, which was absolutely shocking, and was amazing to see how Bruce Arians did give in and probably took some advice from Tom Brady. We know how the New England Patriots used to love the ball, and Tom Brady might have said, this might be a way to tackle them. And I love how Bruce Arians came out after the game. He said, I'm listening to Tom Brady. I'm letting him be him. In New England, they did it their way. But I'm allowing Tom Brady to see what he sees, come back, feed it back to me, and we'll listen to him. So I think that it is huge that all those pieces of the cogs were there, but it was Tom Brady that has allowed them to get to where they are right now.
Yeah, he's doing exactly what they went out and got him to do, Mark. I mean, remember when they brought him there, everybody was immediately, the Bucs are going to the Super Bowl immediately. And some people were like, maybe they'll be in the Super Bowl next year. But the onus always was Brady coming to the Bucs is going to put them over the top. And we're in year one, and he's on the literal front door of putting them over the top. The only thing that's standing in his way is the Green Bay Packers, and that's kind of a big Goliath to try to get over. But Tom Brady slayed a couple Goliaths in his days, the old man, as I like to call him, because he is pretty old. This Green Bay team, they're good. We all know that. They went 13-3 this year. Their first loss of the season was to this Tampa Bay team way, way, way back in the long, long time ago of October. That's super long time ago. The Bucs blew out the Packers in Tampa Bay 38-10. Rodgers had a terrible day. He had 2 interceptions, got sacked 5 times. He just never looked comfortable in the backfield. He just looked way off. And you would think that, okay, are you trying to say that the Bucs have Aaron Rodgers' number or they know something that we don't? I don't think so, because you look at that one game and you think, okay, maybe they figured the Packers out. And then you look at the rest of the Packers schedule. Okay, let's look around the rest of their games and see how they did. Did something like that ever happen again? It didn't. It just didn't. They never got bullied like that again. They never got pushed around like that again. Granted, they did lose. Their next 2 losses were a blown second half lead to the Colts that we've talked about a lot on this show. And, a tough divisional loss to the Vikings. Divisional losses happen, people, even to the best of teams. But that Tampa Bay game is just an outlier. It's an anomaly, a blip on the radar, if you will, Mark. It's so out there that over the last couple weeks, way before I started even looking at this game, I started looking back at that one and thinking that game feels like a fluke now. That, Tampa Bay played great. And then after that game, we all said Tampa Bay's going to the Super Bowl now. And, then we kind of cooled on that one. But I feel like the Packers learned a lesson from that game, that maybe they weren't as good as they thought they were, and they went and got better, and that they really took a hard look in the mirror after getting their teeth kicked in on the road. That game made them better. And I think that game is going to make them even better this weekend, because they're going to come out hungry for revenge, because like I said, Tampa Bay was their lone loss on the season. Aaron Rodgers, that was his worst game all year. He's thrown 5 interceptions total this season. 2 of them came against this Tampa Bay team. Rodgers has been unstoppable against everybody else except Tampa Bay. I promise you, he's going to come out with an edge in this one. And that, Tampa Bay's assembled a good team, don't get me wrong, and they deserve to be here. They earned their right to be here after beating a good Washington defense and a good New Orleans Saints defense. They deserve to be here, but I don't know. I'm really struggling to see how this Tampa Bay team is going to come in and do that once again to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers right now.
I think that... No, so I'll put it this way. I was watching Conor McGregor yesterday do an interview with Ariel Helwani, talking about the Khabib Nurmagomedov fight that he'll want to get back at some point. And Conor McGregor said, I saw the best of him. He saw the worst of me. And I think that can kind of sum up the Tampa Bay game, that Tampa Bay really only got the worst and showed their best against Green Bay. And that's only good for Green Bay because they know what they can improve on, whereas Tampa Bay really had nowhere to improve. Now, the other side of that is I wouldn't call it a fluke what the defense did that day. I think that Todd Bowles' aggressive defense matched up perfectly against what Green Bay does. So much so I was talking about it on the show last week. I was saying that the Rams defense would want to replicate exactly what Tampa Bay did to Green Bay. Now the Aaron Donald thing being out meant that they never got to really fully achieve that. But I think that, it comes back to, well, Tampa Bay has the blueprint already there. And I think as far as going back to games, they know what they did, and that was get pressure. Like you said, with the interceptions, there was 11 turnovers by Green Bay all year, the lowest in the league. 2 of them came against Tampa Bay. An even more impressive stat, I think, that Aaron Rodgers got sacked 20 times all year. 4 of them came against Tampa Bay that day, 13 quarterback hits to go with it. So that then led into those sacks, that pressure that was being brought by Tampa Bay is what led to Aaron Rodgers forcing the turnover. So that, in my eyes, is not a complete fluke. Now, you can't expect turnovers. Like, there's pressures can lead to turnovers and can increase your chances, but you can't expect to turn the ball over. So that's certainly what Green Bay is going to want to do. They're not going to want to turn the ball over again, because look what Tampa Bay did last week. They had three touchdowns that all came off the back of a turnover against the Saints.
You're
and I must say, to kind of put a bow on what I was saying about those 2019 pieces, they were 3 2019 draft picks that got those picks the other day. You had the first rounder Devin White, the second rounder Sean Murphy Bunting, the third rounder Mike Edwards. They all set up those touchdowns, which again just shows that I think that all the pieces have been in place for over a year, and that Brady was the one to bring it together. And I just think that the confidence that having Tom Brady on their team does help in a game like this, that those guys had to make clutch plays last week, and they did. Whereas in other years, that's, I think, where Tampa Bay might have fallen apart, but they have that confidence and that swagger and that boldness now to go out and do that. So I think that the way that the defense stacks up, they're going to bring the pressure again. Vita Vea might be back for this game. He's been on IR since what? He went out the week before the Green Bay game, and so it was week 5. Yeah. So he's been out since then. He might be back for this game. So they're getting healthier, but they still have Aaron Dominican Suh. I mean, Shaq Barrett hasn't been playing amazing, not compared to what he did last year. But when you put Shaq Barrett and Dominican Suh, Jason Pierre-Paul, and Vita Vea, like that front four, the way that they set that up, I don't even know, did I mention off the top when I meant to? It's that's been there for over a year, and that wasn't a fluke that was put together. Like I said, they got rid of Gerald McCoy, and Todd Bowles has this aggressive style that he wanted that front four in place to bring pressure. Then you have the ball hawks just behind them, Levante David and Devin White, and that's what the whole defense that Todd Bowles goes for. It's just aggression. It's just blitzing. It's exactly what Green Bay doesn't want to see, because if Aaron Rodgers, like we said last week when we said the Rams were perfectly set up to do it until they weren't, if he's forced to throw the ball fast, that's bad news, because that's why he had those turnovers that day. It's because he had no time. He just had to get rid of the ball, and that's how you turn the ball over. So I think the Tampa Bay, in that aspect, in that regard, those have a good chance of getting to this Green Bay offense again.
You know, Mark, you went on and on talking about the pressure and how Tampa Bay's built to bring pressure. You know, last week when we talked about the All-Pros, we mentioned 2 names from the Green Bay Packers offensive line, their center, and then we talked about David Bakhtiari. Well,
Corey
David
Lindsey,
Bakhtiari
the
was
center, yeah.
Yeah, David Bakhtiari was there in the early part of the season. He's not there anymore because he suffered a season-ending injury right before the postseason starts. So the Green Bay offensive line's a little bit thinner than it was back then. So
it must be said that he actually got injured in that game. David Bakhtiari did miss time he broke his ribs and missed 3 weeks from the Tampa Bay game. But as far as the offensive line goes, I've no reason after last week to be worried about them. I mean, they ran the ball so well against the Rams, who went into that game off the back of a regular season where they were 3rd best against the run. And they haven't given up. They've given up 1 sack in the last 2 weeks since David Bakhtiari went out. They gave up a sack against the Bears. They gave up no sack last week against a ferocious pass rush from LA. So in that aspect, I think that you can suggest that because they've backed the Aries out, that they're going to be bad. But what Ricky Wagner is doing, filling in there, and then Billy Turner, I think, is the other side. Yeah, helps you phenomenally when you're going against, like, just the confidence that you can go into this game, I suppose.
Yeah, just a little bit. I mean, we saw something like that out of Cleveland when they had some offensive line guys missing and they played phenomenally against Pittsburgh. Like, it can happen. Like, these backup guys can play pretty well. And so far, it's holding for Green Bay. And I know that's what they're praying for come this weekend because, you know, if Shaq Barrett and if Vita Vea plays, if they're in the backfield all game, that's a nightmare scenario for the Packers. Nobody wants that if you're Green Bay for the entire game. It's just like, when you talk about a game in Green Bay in late January, you conjure those old images of snowy football and everything's freezing cold. And it looks like it's going to be below freezing this weekend with precipitation. Last time I checked was above 50%. So there's a pretty solid likelihood we might get snow this weekend. And that really benefits to defensive heavy football, like Mark's talking about with the pass rush and Green Bay's ability to run the ball well. You know, it could be a very different game than what some people might be imagining with, you know, Tom Brady slinging it downfield and Aaron Rodgers, you know, adding to his MVP case. It could be very different than what some of us are imagining for this weekend.
Yeah, again, like, it's going to come down to the same matchups we talk about each week. And it's why we've kind of strayed away from mentioning the names of Davante Adams and stuff like this over and over again. But I mean, yeah, it's going to come down to Davante Adams making plays. And when he couldn't there on Sunday or Saturday, whichever day the Rams game was on, Alan Lazard stepped up.
Yep.
I mean, these guys have the potential, and we don't know what day they're going to step up on. But those fringe, or however I described them last week, players, they are there and they are expected to make plays. And when Davante Adams isn't making plays, they can make plays. Now, I think it'll be an easier assignment this week for Davante Adams himself. He's not going to be going up against the Jalen Ramsey this week, so he might be able to get a bit more free, and that helps that offense obviously phenomenally. Todd Bowles historically has struggled against tight ends, so if Robert Tonyan can get going for Green Bay, that helps them out too. If the run game is completely different now than it was in week 6 when these teams met. I mean, like, the Green Bay Packers just absolutely bullied on the weekend the Rams, because now it's not just Aaron Jones, it is Jamal Williams is coming back into the fray again, and AJ Dillon. We've seen flashes out of him this season too. So, like, there's plenty of positives from both teams. I probably would point to the run game and the offensive line for Green Bay being good against LA being something that I would put huge confidence in. But then at the same time, the defense just for Tampa Bay just beat the New Orleans Saints. And if they can do that against Green Bay, I mean, I just think it's a good matchup for both teams. They have strengths that they can both look at and say, no, that's why we're going to win the game.
I like coming in here because I was curious to see who was going to hype up Tampa Bay, and it sounds like you're really liking their case, Mark. I'm excited to hear who you're going to pick, though. I'm hoping.
I can't tell you who I'd pick myself, honestly. I think that I'm in love with, for some reason, the Tom Brady story. That I just think I put out an Instagram post during the week saying that it'd be a perfect way for him to retire, and I don't want him to retire. I wanted to go see him this year, so I said I have to make it happen next year before he does retire. So, I mean, I don't want him to get to that point where it's even a decision. I want him to make sure that he's coming back next year. But I think that, yeah, like, they weren't explosive. Like, I don't think either quarterback, Drew Brees or Tom Brady, hit 200 yards in the other day. So that's worrying.
Yep.
That's worrying for Tampa Bay going against the Green Bay offense, which has been phenomenal the last few weeks. Sorry, for the whole year. You're going to have to put up points. And a defense for Tampa Bay is too hit or miss for my liking. So I think I'm going to have Green Bay down on my picks.
Okay.
But I really want to go for Tampa Bay.
I can tell. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited. I think part of it is to do with how they've been putting these pieces in place. And as I text James the other day, every fan thinks that they're a season away from a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And suddenly now Tampa Bay, who was completely obscure, is there on the edge, trying to play in a home Super Bowl. No team has ever done it before. And they're so close to doing it that I think for such an irrelevant fan base. I want that dream to come true for them. So I think that's why I'm hyping them up as well. That you are able to point, look, they've made it to the conference weekend for a reason. They have plenty of talent. Green Bay has been number 2 in everyone's power rankings for weeks since week 11 when Pittsburgh fell away. So it's definitely a mighty task. But I think that they've been humming Tampa Bay for the last few weeks, that they could not be going into this game health-wise, confidence-wise, ambition-wise in a better place, especially after overcoming the division rival New Orleans Saints, which that in itself, I know when the Cardinals beat Seattle in the regular season at home for the first time since 2012, that gave me such a kick because I said, look, we're finally there and everyone saw us do it. And I think that's how Tampa Bay is feeling right now. And I just, for the likes of your James Hills, the Tampa Bay fans, that Green Bay has always been relevant. I know Aaron Rodgers hasn't won a Super Bowl, 10 years, he hasn't gotten into it, that I know they want to win it as well. But I think that, historically, like, Green Bay has the Super Bowls and it's Lambeau and all like this, that I just think there's a romantic part of me that thinks that Tom Brady swapping teams in his first year going to the Super Bowl is just phenomenal, because when I think that trade happened, we were all a bit skeptical, or not trade, when that move happened, we were all a bit skeptical about, he's probably on the bit of the decline now and he's going to get found out. And then he goes and tosses 40 touchdowns in the regular season.
Yeah. And, speaking to the romantic angle from it, this will be Green Bay's first time hosting the NFC Championship game since 2008, January of 2008. That was back when Brett Favre was playing quarterback and all that. And they lost that game to a team that could pressure the quarterback pretty well in the New York Football Giants. So it's all kind of setting up for history to repeat itself for Mark's Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Listen, I want the Bucs to win this game. I really do, because it's different. It's unique. I have never seen them get this far in the playoffs in my entire life. So it would be fun and new to me to watch. But I'm after getting out there on a ledge with the Bills earlier, I'm going to keep this one safe and take the Packers.
Yeah, I should almost add that it's like, whichever team loses in the NFC this weekend, it really sucks extra hard because there's nowhere else for them to go. Like, it's not like you're thinking, oh, we're a wide receiver away.
Right.
That, say the Ravens, that's the story this week, that, the Ravens, they have no passing game. Like, at least the Bills can point to, oh, we need to get a more balanced offense. We need to get the rushing defense going again, or we need to get a better defense. When it comes to Tampa Bay and Green Bay, they both have as good of an offense as you can expect to get. I mean, Kansas City is in a whole other ballpark. But in terms of play calling, in terms of the players that you need to make that offense click, Green Bay and Tampa Bay have the pieces that they can hope to get. And it's the same with the defense, that Green Bay's is coming into its own. Zadarius Smith is playing much better now since Sean Gary has stepped up. Talked a bunch about Darnell Savage and all this throughout the year. That, like, it's not that either team is a couple of pieces away. They won't know where to go from here, especially Green Bay having just had the same fate last year, losing in the conference game against the 49ers. And for Tampa Bay, it's going to be 1 year older for everyone, and that's bad news too. So whereas there's going to be a silver lining for Buffalo or for Kansas City, the same can't be said for the NFC. And that's what I just think, that there's even more on the line, that you're not guaranteed to have relevancy for a long time. I mean, Green Bay will probably get to this point again, but there's no reason they shouldn't do it this year, especially when it's in Green Bay.
Exactly. There's no excuses this year. Like last year, it was, okay, they couldn't win on the West Coast, and it's the 49ers, so you can't really blame them. But now, this is their time. This is their moment. And the same thing could be said for the Bucs, that this is their shining moment. This is what they got Brady for. This is, everything is lined up perfectly for both teams. It's time to put up or shut up and make it all the way to the end. But, that's the way the cookie crumbles. Somebody's got to lose. It's the way it always happens. And it sucks. It really does. But somebody's losing, and somebody's going to the Super Bowl to play the winner of the AFC Championship in a couple weeks in Tampa Bay. And I think we're both kind of hoping it's Tom Brady at this point, because it would be fun to finally do that. It would be so crazy because it's never happened.
Tell Mark from 2 years ago, as I rooted hard for the Kansas City Chiefs to knock Tom Brady off his perch, that I'd be rooting for him to get back into another Super Bowl. But it's just a great storyline. And yeah, I guess something that movies are made of. We haven't mentioned this on the show. I haven't seen anyone mention it in the media this week, but the games that we've just previewed, sorry, were both in week 6. Buffalo met Kansas
Yes.
City in Buffalo in week 6. Green Bay went to Tampa Bay. So the locations the locations haven't flipped, only in one game. But yeah, isn't that remarkable that the 2 games for the NFC Championship? And we have seen Tampa Bay play Kansas City already this year. I'm not sure about the other ones, but yeah, it is. I just thought that was a phenomenal thing, a phenomenal tidbit that I noticed when I was putting my notes together.
It's just a bunch of rematches, man. It's just a bunch of rematches of games we got earlier. But I will say, I think these versions of the games that we're getting this weekend will be a lot better than round ones that we got way back in week 6. But if we do get Tampa Bay and Kansas City, I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch of that one because that was a pretty good game. I'm not going to lie. But that's it for our game previews. That's championship weekend for the AFC and NFC. But don't go anywhere yet, people, because we still got a lot of fun left. Because as Mark mentioned at the very beginning of the show, we're going to play a very fun game called Pick Party, which is hosted on NFL.com, where you could win a chance to go to the Super Bowl next season, not this season, next season in LA, that shiny new stadium in Inglewood. Oh, it's so pretty. Oh, it's so magical. That could be you and us. You should invite us when you win. Anyway, here's how the game works. It asks you 15 questions and a tiebreaker at the very end about the games that happen this weekend. The questions can range from simple things like, which jersey number will catch the first touchdown in the Buffalo Kansas City, not the Buffalo Kansas City game, the Tampa Bay Green Bay game. Will it be a number higher than 26 or a number lower than 26? Or the question could be simply, will there be a field goal longer than 45 yards in the Kansas City game? They can range from anything from that, questions 1 through 15, and a tiebreaker at the very end. And we are going to sit here and break down the questions. It's another way of looking at the games this weekend, but we will warn you now, this will get very numbers-based very quickly.
I think that it's a fun game if you want to play along and put up your computer. You might get something if you want to listen along to it. I think that it'd be tough to listen to in a gym, for instance, because there is going to be a few numbers in this. But yeah, I've had a bit of fun with it lately, and yeah, it's just yes or no. They're extremely close questions. I learned when I was breaking down the numbers. You think that some are obvious, but computers come up with them because they're so 50-50. And I just think it's a lot of fun. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a coin toss. So if you want to just go to the end of the episode now and play this game and just, flip your coin and let it decide that way, you probably have as much of a chance. But we'll try and talk you through some. And yes, let's see if we can have a bit of fun. And I'm going to say, I'm not my answer isn't correct per se. It's what I'm leaning on.
Yes.
But I don't think I have a yes or no verdict after doing it. And that just purely comes off the fact that they're super close questions and it's supposed to be a bit of fun.
Exactly. We're just here to have fun. But if you do win, you have to invite us. It's required by law. So, Mark, if it's okay with you, do you mind if I lead this thing off with my first question?
Please.
So,
Get us off to a good start.
Oh, yeah, this is a good off to a good start. So Mark's handling AFC questions. I've got the NFC. And the first question up is one I just talked about a second ago. Will the jersey number of the player to score the first touchdown be more or less than 26.5? More or less than 26.5. Now, this is a tough one because you suddenly have to think of the entire rosters for both Green Bay and Tampa Bay and think who is, on which side. Well, I broke it down for you so you don't have to worry. So less than 26.5. We got guys like Devontae Adams. That's a big playmaker. Aaron Rodgers. I put him in there in case he scores a rushing touchdown. I think that's what they're looking for. Tavon Austin, Alan Lazard, Equimania St. Brown. Those are for the Packers. Then you look at the Bucks and who they have below 26.5. Tom Brady, in case he scores a rushing touchdown. He used to run a lot of QB sneaks back in New England. They might bust that out if they get to the goal line. And you got guys like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. That could be potentially big because we didn't talk about it back then, but Antonio Brown's listed as day-to-day right now with a knee injury. If he's limited in this game, that could see more action towards Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I'm just saying.
And he's a number that's quite high. He is. Exactly. So if for people that aren't aware, typically your teens are wide receivers, your 20s, mid-30s are running backs, and then your 80s are tight ends. So I think this question basically is asking, do you think it's going to be your wide receiver number 1 or 2? because
basically.
I think Mike Evans must be number 11, Chris Godwin's number 14, Devontae Adams is number 14, I think, as well.
Yeah, he's in the teams basically. I think he's
So
like,
I would point to that question
mhm.
being wide receiver. I think that we win in this game, unless it's going to be Gronk or something like this. I'm putting my faith in one of the top wide receivers getting the first touchdown.
See, and that was my holdup as well. But then when you look at, I really looked at the question. I tried to think, okay, is there a potential for a loophole here? Because I've tried to find a way in which I could screw myself over with the answer, and I think I found the loophole. I think defensive players count for this question, Mark. Because what if it's a
Oh,
pick six,
absolutely,
fumble,
absolutely.
and score? Most of those players are above the number 26 and a half. So you got to take into account all of those defensive players on both sides of the ball as well.
You do, but I think that you have to play the safest hand. The safest hand to me is wide receiver, and it's wide receiver, running back. Again, it's a flip question. If some freak accident of a fumble being returned or a pick six, I mean, forget about it. Everyone's getting the question wrong. Then it does obviously play into it that there's more players above the number 26 on the field. But if Aaron Jones could obviously cause you some trouble there. I think Leonard Fournette is number 27 himself. So that's why they've set it at 26 and under versus 27. I think that they're saying wide receiver, running back. I'm going wide receiver.
This is interesting because I was going to lean on the more bodies option, which is like, you cast the widest net. Hopefully you get something back because, you got guys like Aaron Jones and, the aforementioned Antonio Brown and Marquez Valdez-Scantling could potentially help you get in there. And Robert Tonyan, who we mentioned a bit earlier, is a potential in there as well. So that would be my lean for that one. Who, if I had to pick it, would be, go for more. But Mark's right. That less option was very tempting with those wide receivers. Those are some dangerous playmakers in that one. But that's how we break it down for the first question.
To me, it's going to be I'm playing the hand of who's the best player that's going to go to. I'm playing that they look for Devontae Adams early. Robert Tonyan and all, yeah, as the game goes on, there's going to be other touchdowns scored. But I think you look to your big time players first. Not even big time. I think you got your wide receiver. I think there's going to be straightforward enough touchdown to start the game. So I'm going wide receiver is going to score that. So I'm going under 26.
That's fair. So that's the first question up. So Mark, you get to go next, buddy.
Yeah, I'm gonna not overthink this one. Will the longest field goal be more or less than 45 and a half yards? Anything shorter than 45 yards seems like a short field goal, a gimme nowadays. There's always clutch kicks that need to be made. Harrison Butker, the Kansas City kicker, he had to kick from 51 yards, 3 times against LA earlier in the year, and it seemed like super high pressure he was able to hit. His thing now is that he can't hit from short, that he's able to miss or extra points and field goals that are from 31 yards and less. Tyler Bass has had a breakout year, and he's only had a better breakout year if he's getting your points in your fantasy team from kicking long field goals. So 45 and a half, you'd expect there's going to be a field goal longer than that. As per sportsbettingdime.com, the wind is kicking up a bit in Kansas City this weekend, but it is not expected to affect the kicking game, they say. So, yeah, I'm just going to say that we have 2 clutch kickers. They're going to be asked to make a kick, and I'm going for longer than 45 and a half yards.
That's fair. That makes sense. And, always, when I get asked a question like that, I always bet on the long kick. That's what I always do, because there's always going to be a situation where somebody's lining up for a 50-yarder. I swear to God, there always is. So I think Mark's got the right idea on that one.
If the question was 49 and a half, that's when it becomes tricky. But when it goes to 45 and a half, yeah, fine, we'll take that.
Oh, yeah. All right. So that's the second question. Third question, back to the NFC for this one. Will the first play from scrimmage in the Tampa Bay Green Bay game gain more or less than 5.5 yards? So I did the manual labor, and Mark told me that there was an easier way to do this, and I hate myself for not knowing that. But anyway, I did the manual thing of going back through each one of their games and looking at each team's first play of scrimmage and seeing, did it at least get 5 yards is what I looked at. And that happened for each one of these teams, a grand total combined of 10 times for Green Bay and Tampa Bay. They did it 5 times each. Funny enough, when they played each other in week 6, like we talked about earlier, neither of them did it on their first play. I saw a lot of runs from Green Bay and then a lot of deep passes from Tampa Bay kind of thing. So I think it really depends on who gets the ball first. If it's Green Bay, I think the likelihood of it going 5.5 yards is not going to happen because, like I said, I've seen a lot of repetition in them running the ball first. But with Tampa Bay, they might try to take a shot first. So it's more or less of who do you think is going to get it. And when it comes down to something like that, I'm going to say no. I would lean on no. It's not. Whatever team gets the ball first will not go 5.5 yards.
I would agree, and I think it's big because it could be a running play. So what you hope to average 4.5 yards per play with your running game.
Mhm.
That's obviously shorter than 4.5. So if they run the ball, your odds aren't great there. And if it's a pass, it could also be incomplete. So if there's three options, run's not going to make it, incomplete pass isn't going to make it, a completed pass. I'm going for the option that gives me two things that say no, it won't.
Mhm.
And yeah, look, if they come out with a big play, that sucks for us. But
Yeah, we got it wrong right off the bat. Bam. All right, so Mark, you're next up with your question. Back to the AFC.
so these are actually two back-to-back difficult ones in a row. You asked, yeah, obviously, will it be 5.5 or more? Now we're going to go to, will the Chiefs gain more or less than 2.5 first downs on the first possession? Tricky one because team script their opening plays
Mm-hmm. Yep.
of the game. We know that, and that gives you confidence. And to finish up quickly, I don't see Andy Reid messing it up. But the other thing is, if they have a bad drive, we'll be all worried about Patrick Mahomes. But again, that feeds the entire thing that they're going to have to make sure that they have a really well scripted drive. But does that mean that they're going to go for a deep ball and try and get it out of the way really fast? That, they have this like 60-yard, not even 60-yard. They'd have to go for like a 70-yard and it rules out enough room to get them two first downs. I did look for the numbers. I have deleted them, so we'll forget about that. But yeah, I think that the Chiefs get off to hot starts. They sustain drives. Oh yeah, sorry, I did. I looked back through the last few games. I couldn't find any 3-and-outs. They've been able to sustain drives essentially. So I am thinking it's the Chiefs. It's only the Chiefs. It's not Buffalo that we have to worry about. It's just the Chiefs. They've been able to sustain drives at the beginning of the game, and he reads a great play caller. I think that he'll have the script up well, especially to hide any Mahomes worries, niggles that we're wondering about. And I think yes is the answer for that one.
All right, that's fair and simple and quick enough, especially after we spent so much time praising Andy Reid earlier. So that's the AFC question. Back to the NFC for this next one, and this it could be a little trickier if you think about it hard enough. But it's, will Davante Adams, the Green Bay wide receiver, gain at least 110 receiving yards and catch at least one touchdown? That doesn't mean total yards, just receiving yards. 110 receiving yards and one total touchdown. So I went back through his entire regular season and I wanted to count how many times did he at least hit that in a game, 110 receiving yards and one touchdown. He did it 6 times throughout the course of the season. He could have had 7 because he had 106 yards and a touchdown in one game. So he fell like 4 yards short. So he's done it at least 6 times, could be 7. But you also have to remember, he missed some time earlier in the regular season. So he didn't have a full slate of games to do this with. So he could have potentially had more. So what I'm basically arguing here is that for almost half of his entire season, he's put up at least that stat line, which is insane to even think about. I say yes, is what I'm trying to say. That Davante Adams will at least have 110 receiving yards and a touchdown in this game.
Even when they had the snow game against Tennessee, I think that he had numbers like that, so he can do it at the best of times. And again, like I said, against Tampa Bay, he's not going to be matched up against an absolute stud cornerback like he has been in a few recent weeks. So yeah, that definitely plays in there. If we want to move back to my game, yes, will Josh Allen have 2 of the following: 305 passing yards, 30 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns? So 2 of the 3 of those. So this game, the over-under is 54 points.
Cool.
So that puts it, at about 27 points per team, 4 touchdowns each. I'm after saying that the rushing game isn't really there. So that means that, yeah, Josh Allen, if they're going to score the 4 touchdowns, yeah, he could be involved in them. But I'm kind of leaning on that he is going to give up at least one of those touchdowns to the rushing game. So I did break it down. 8 of 18 games, Josh Allen had either 305 yards or 30 rush yards. But of the 18 games, only 5 times has he had both 305 passing yards and 30 rush yards. 6 times this year he's had 4 touchdowns. So I'm just trying to paint a picture of how difficult it is to hit those stats for him this year, let alone to combine them all together. So I'm saying that he will hit the 30 rush yards. I think that he'll be able to do that, but I think that he borders on the 300-yard mark. And again, if I'm saying that the secondary for Kansas City is going to try and cause them problems and negate Stephon Diggs a bit from that game, I would lean more towards no, just because the stats are right at that echelon that he hits each week. And yeah, it could be tricky to get all of them. I think that he gives up I think he gives up the 4 touchdown side of things. I think that's where we're allowed to then pick the over-under on the 305 passing yards. I'm just saying that that's right at his average. So I'm just saying that he'll go just slightly below that this week. And I'm going to go no then that on that's that.
All right. I like how he just broke it down with math ways, because I just sat here when I originally looked at that question when we were doing notes, I stared at a wall for like 5 minutes. I'm like, can he get 4 touchdowns? I'm like, I guess he can get 4. But I thought of it as if he's going to get 2 of those 3, I looked at it as, excuse me, I had to cough. He would get the 30 rushing yards and then the passing yards. I didn't see a scenario in which he could get the 4 touchdowns. So I like.
So
how
that's
Mark
where I'm saying. Yeah, that's where I'm saying he's done it 6 times this year, which
Exactly.
that's a third of the time he gets off 4 touchdowns. So again, we're going with the numbers here, and we're saying no.
Exactly. Math never lies, people. Math never lies. So that's Mark's AFC question. So back to the NFC for me really quick. And this is a very easy one, so we'll go through it super fast. Will Rodgers or Brady complete 10 passes first? Will Rodgers or Brady complete 10 passes first? Since it's a home game and, it, like I said earlier, could be potential for snow and Rodgers is more used to that environment, I am going to take Rodgers on that one, that he will complete 10 passes first.
Oh, lovely.
Super
Nice.
quick. Super.
And sure, look at what happened the last day with Brady. The passing game was a bit slow and groggy, and they just ran the ball like absolutely crazy. Exactly. So yeah, I think Rodgers is the go-to one there. Next one is a tricky one again. It's a real 50-50. Will Stephon Diggs or Tyreek Hill reach 75 yards first? So that question, I think, to me is the deep threat versus the league's passing yard leader. Stephon Diggs will get more targets, but Tyreek Hill has the higher yards per play and a higher long this year. So I was kind of thinking that if the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, and Daniel Sorensen aren't really letting Stephon Diggs, if they're kind of lurking in the secondary and they're not letting Stephon Diggs break off for big plays, and that's what he has done at times this year, that he's just able to turn guys. It's a tough question. I just feel like I'm going with Tyreek Hill. I feel like they're going to, again, I'm going to side with hoping that they have that deep ball early. And yeah, I mean, Tyreek Hill won't get as many touches as Stephon Diggs, because Stephon Diggs gets an outrageous amount of them, but it's what Tyreek Hill does with them. And in a race to 75, I'm going to lean with him. It's an extremely difficult question.
I mean, we talked about it earlier when we said we know they're going to get open, the Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers. He's going to get a 30-yard catch in that game. Tyreek Hill is. I can almost guarantee it. He gets one in almost every game. But that's a lot easier one to predict there with Mark. With going with Tyreek Hill, I think that's the safe option there. But
do you know what? I should jump in here. At the end of the game, you actually have to rank your confidence levels, and you're actually assigned points per question. Mm-hmm. And that would be going down as so they're ranked between 15 points and 1 point. So that'd be going as my 1 point question, because, you can worry about it. You don't have to worry about it because it's only worth a point then. So it's basically you're allowed to pick which question you want off, I think.
That is correct. So that's the AFC question. Now back to the NFC super quick, and it's a lot similar to the one Mark just had. Will Aaron Jones or Mike Evans have a play of 15 or more yards from scrimmage first? Will Aaron Jones or Mike Evans have a 15-yard play first? This really depends on who gets the ball first in this game, like we talked about a couple questions ago. If you believe that Tampa Bay has bought into this patience approach with the run game, then maybe you don't want to lean on Mike Evans right now. Maybe you would like to take the gamble with Aaron Jones versus that defensive line and see what that gets you. That's where my mind went with this one, and that's what I'm going to ride with, is that I'll take Aaron Jones on this question, and that who gets a 15-yard play first from scrimmage.
Easy enough.
Yeah, super easy, super quick. Nothing crazy.
So my one might be a bit crazy this time. So this is, will the first touchdown be more or less than 10.5 yards?
Oh boy, that's a tough one.
In Buffalo and Kansas City, right? So I have to thank Pro Football Reference for this question, because they allow you to see a list of touchdowns scored on, and what the opponents did to you on the homepage of each team, which was crazy helpful when I was looking into this. So Kansas City scored 57 touchdowns this year. Half of those met our target. Buffalo scored 60 touchdowns. Half of those met our target. So that was no help there, because we just know that it's 50-50, whether it's going to be a long or not. So then I looked defensively. Both teams conceded 44 touchdowns. 15 of those met our criteria. So all of a sudden I'm thinking, okay, you're going against a defense that 66% of the time doesn't allow this criteria to be met. So 2 out of 3 touchdowns that concede are not above 11 yards, or sorry, above 10 yards. So then it also boils down, this has to be the first touchdown of the game. In a third of Buffalo's games, they gave up a long. In a quarter of Kansas City's game, they gave up the long touchdown. So all of that factored in, it always points to it being a touchdown of under 10.5 yards being scored. It's more likely whichever way you boil it down. So I'm going to say it's safer to go under 10.5. The problem is with these games, is the aggression level from the coaches, from the play calling, is going to mess with each of these questions, really, but particularly this one, because you could have a big deep ball go off. But when you watch Kansas City against Cleveland the other day, they used the deep ball to get down the field, and then they left themselves in a tight area that Patrick Mahomes ended up running it in. So just to sum it up again, it's the teams historically this season have pointed to under 10.5 yards. So when you boil it all down, and Kansas City, it's only 1 out of 4 opening drives had a long touchdown first. So
that is very interesting. Thank you for that. And this is why I dropped out of math class, because you said a bunch of numbers and I'm like, man, that's a lot of numbers.
I really hope that this question comes off. Like I said, I did really well in these games last year with Bud Light when they were doing them, and this is the kind of one that I used to really sink my teeth into. So that's a game winner if we're able to get that one right.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So back to the NFC for my next question. This one's a bit of a doozy. Well, not really when you think about it. Will there be more or less than 13.5 points scored in the fourth quarter of the NFC Championship game? More or less than 13.5 points in the fourth quarter. Basically, what the question is asking, do you think 14 points will be scored in the fourth quarter? Yes or no? That's all it's basically asking. Do you think 2 touchdowns will be scored? And if you watch any NFL game in the fourth quarter this year, they've been bananas. They've been, crazy. They just devolved into just mass chaos and cats living with dogs. It's just insanity. So if you for 1 second think that the NFC Championship game with so much on the line is going to be quiet with no fireworks going on, that's insanity. Take the over on this one. 13.5. Please take the over. If you've watched football for more than 5 minutes this year, take the over, please. More than 13.5.
That's one that you want to stack high on your list. You want to give that your somewhere between 10 and 15 points, because even if the Tampa Bay offense isn't clicking, you can be sure Green Bay is going to get at least 1 touchdown. And when say it's a blowout, Tampa Bay will be sure to get in for 1. So yeah, I looked at that and I thought that was one of my higher earners as well. Just to get me back on track. Oh yeah. So then the next question I want to go to is, will Travis Kelsey score a touchdown in the first half? All right. So last week the question was who'll score a touchdown first, him or Tyreek Hill? So now that that's removed, it kind of looks like better odds, because you're just going against what you get, because the first touchdown obviously scored obviously the first 7 minutes, typically with Kansas City. So that makes it seem a bit easier. You have a bit more time to play with. But then I asked myself, is Travis Kelsey even going to score a touchdown? I mean, he had 11 regular season touchdowns. That's obviously less than 1 game. Buffalo gave up 9 touchdowns a year to a tight end. Now, funny enough, 2 of those were to Travis Kelsey in the first half when the teams met in week 6. So Travis Kelsey, like I said, 11 touchdowns. 8 of those came in the first half. So if he's going to score, it's going to come in the first half. That would suggest. But I would veer on no, just because Buffalo was a bit stingy against the tight end with touchdowns. And I think that this is a historic question. They looked back at the game and what, Travis Kelsey went off and was a bad matchup for them the last day. But again, it's a numbers thing. And if he needs to be like Devontae Adams, scoring a touchdown in every single game for me to want to take that.
I like that. It felt like you were going to swerve it, and then you did. I was like, oh, man, I thought he for sure was going to say yes, and then he said no. That was beautifully done, Mark. Beautifully done. All right, so.
He also had one in the first half last week, so I feel like game plans change and stuff as well, so he won't be the one that's targeted there.
Just they change a wee bit every now and then, but all right.
It's so funny, I must say, Hayden, I thought I picked that question. I thought that I picked Tyreek Hill, and when Travis Kelsey got it, I was like, oh, no, game over.
Hey,
and then I looked at it later on.
Right. These games add a new layer of stress every single time you play. All right. So back to the NFC. This is actually the final question for the NFC, and then Mark's got 2 more for the AFC. All right. So final question for the NFC. You guys ready for this? Will the first score of the second half be a touchdown or another type of score? Will the first score of the second half be a touchdown or another type of score? When they say other type of score, they mean something like a safety or a field goal, something along those lines. So basically, will the first score of the second half be a touchdown? Yes or no? So I wanted to look at it through the lens of, okay, well, like Mark said earlier with like kicking conditions and all that, you want to take that into account as well. And that, would it be a hard day for kickers in Lambeau Field? Well, we talked about that earlier. It's going to be below freezing. There's a very high likelihood of snow in that game. So kicking conditions could be a bit difficult, but that could also potentially hinder some drives. So let's say Tampa Bay gets the ball first to start the second half. They might stall like around the 30-yard line and have to kick a field goal, and there's your score right there. Or, if it's Green Bay, like Mark mentioned earlier, when they played Tennessee, they had no problem driving in the snow and they could easily score a touchdown. So it really kind of depends on what's the weather like, who gets the ball first. It's a lot of kind of potential moving pieces going in there. But in questions like this, where field goals potentially play a factor, that's the one I personally always lean on. And that if there's going to be a score in the second half, which there will be, like I said a second ago, if you're expecting it to be quiet, you're crazy. There will be a score, and I'm going to take a field goal first. That's just my personal opinion. I always bet on field goals.
I would say that Bruce Arians is going to be too aggressive in this game. And if he stalls, he's going to go for an 4th down. It being the playoffs and all that.
Yeah, you know him better than me. So if he needs it, he'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to set up, don't worry, I'm setting up multiple accounts so that I cover every option.
Mark wants those tickets.
What's 15 by 15? Isn't that the maths to work out the odds of, or the amount of variation that you have to do? So leading us into a couple more. Will Kansas City's quarterback have the long of above or below 42.5 yards? So I'm presuming that Patrick Mahomes is going to be the one in the game. So I looked into it. In half of the games he played in this year, he did have a long thereabouts, and really was kind of the threshold again. Plus the aggressiveness of the playoffs. Again, I'm expecting a big play early in the game just to kind of loosen the Bills defense up a little bit. That, I'm kind of veering on the yes here. I also look back to last year's playoffs there, just to piggyback off that point. And in each of the 3 games, Kansas City did satisfy that they did always have a big play in the playoffs when they become more aggressive. So, when it goes from 1 every 2 games in the regular season, it's full time. And they did do it last week against Cleveland. Add into that Buffalo is 14th against the pass. But the one thing was 5 games of 17 this year is all that Buffalo's defense allowed this to happen. So that is a tricky one. And 4 of those happened in a row, weeks 9 to 13, including the Hail Murray being one of them. So there is drawbacks for 2 things. The Patrick Mahomes toe. We haven't even talked about the toe. For God's sake, Hayden, we didn't even mention the bloody toe.
Yeah, we should just fold now because we didn't talk about his toe injury
We
that
need
I saw on
to,
TV as we were talking.
We need to re-record something and we'll edit it in afterwards. But Patrick Mahomes is the gammy toe, so that could affect his push-off. Honestly, I do think we almost need to mention the toe at the top of the show. But I think it's the aggressiveness of the AFC Championship. And I would go with yes on them going for the big play.
All right, so aggressive play, we'll get a 4.5 bomb.
And then talk about aggressiveness. Will there be a successful 2-point conversion in this game? I'm going to hinge or piggyback on numbers 100% here. So there's 1,473 touchdowns scored this year. Less than 10% of those had a 2-point attempt, and half of those were successful. So of the 1,473 touchdowns scored, there was 56 2-point conversions this year. That to me is, you have to pick the numbers and you have to go with that. It's not going to happen because that's a 3% on the regular season. There's 3% of scores ended up with a 2-point conversion, which isn't high enough for me when it comes down to this question. So I'm saying no. But then the whole thing is it's the AFC Championship game. So that I think to me was the smartest question that they put on there.
Yeah, that's a bit of a tough one because Yeah, I figured it would be more than 3%. I would just assume it, but I'm apparently wrong on that one. So that's a good way to break it down.
I will break it down for you one more time. 1,473 touchdowns scored, 112 2-point conversions attempted, and 56 of those were scored on. So a very round 50%, not even any decimal points after that. It was bang on.
Wow, that's crazy. All right, so that's it for all of the questions. But then at the very end of the thing, you're going to get a tiebreaker question. We're not going to answer the question for you, but we will tell you what it is so you're not suddenly surprised by it at the very end and start scrambling.
Well, I presume it's the same question. It's going to ask you what the pass rating is. So for which quarterback, I suppose?
Josh Allen was what popped up on my screen.
Rough. Yeah, best of luck to everyone answering that question.
Yeah, so on a scale of 0 to 158.3, you have to enter your own answer, and that will be your tiebreaker answer for the very end. We're not going to answer that here. That is up to you. But if you win, you have to invite us. Those are the rules when you go to the Super Bowl. So that's it for our pick party. I hope everybody enjoyed that and had fun, and I hope somebody that's listening ends up winning this. That would be very nice for us all. I think that would all make us very happy.
My best advice would be to go the exact opposite with what we're after saying. And you're sure to be in with a shout then. You'll be very close to getting on the plane, going over to Los Angeles and sending us a picture.
Oh, yeah. Just do exactly the opposite of what we told you. So that's a solid game plan there, Mark. So that's it for today's episode. We broke down all all of championship weekend and had some fun at the very end. And this should be a very good, fun weekend of football, Mark, in my opinion. So make sure to tune in next week. We'll be back to talk more football stuff. And I hope everybody enjoys championship weekend.
Well, what are we going to be looking at next week? We'll have a week off. We'll have no football to preview. It'll be like the off season all over again for a week.
That's what you think. But guess what, people? We're going to talk football, and we're going to have a lot of fun. You just got to have to tune in and find out. It's going to be probably the greatest show that you've ever witnessed in your life. That's all I'm going to tell you. You've got to keep the curtain, That you got to come in to see it first, Those are the rules. But I promise you, we're going to have something to talk about next week. So that's Mark. I'm Hayden. I hope everybody has a fun weekend, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye.